I'm Dan, and this is 10,000 Hours of Indie, a podcast exploring new music and delving deeper into what goes on in the background of the independent music industry. I'm a musician and music lover and enjoy nothing more than discovering a band I haven't heard. In this first series of more in-depth interviews, I speak to 9 acts from a vast array of musical backgrounds about what it means to be an independent artist. From recording to stage, we talk about their musical processes and the decisions that have shaped them. These interviews are fascinating, and I have certainly learned something from every single one of them. Follow on the socials and email me 10,000indie@gmail.com. Hi Stefan, how's things?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Dan?
I'm good, yes. It's been a while. In fact, that's what I say in my next bit. It's been quite a while that I've known Stefan now. Besides being an experimental indie folk solo musician under the moniker of World of Dust, he plays in Combo Kazam and runs the wonderful indie label Tiny Room Records. He also has a young family to work around and what people would call a proper job too. So it's fantastic that he's managed to find time for any of his music, let alone fitting me into his schedule for yet another interview. So for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little more about your musical background and fill in some of the gaps I left?
Yeah, sure. I think you're pretty on spot. It's what I've been doing the past 10 years actually. Having a family, my daughter is 11. And I think when she was about 6 months old, I decided to start my own label, Tiny Room.
Good timing.
Yeah. And since in those 10 years, I released 75 records on CD, LP, cassette. And some of those were I was involved in as a musician or as a producer. I do have my own projects. The one you mentioned, The World of Dust, is my main solo outfit. But yeah, I also play in Combo Kazam. I also recently, last year in 2024, I recorded an album with an Hungarian, Amsterdam-based songwriter called Christoph Hajos. That was a big project too, and I put a lot of myself in it. So yeah, in all those aspects, writing, recording, performing, and releasing, I've been pretty active. Yeah.
Just for anyone listening to this who can hear the background noise, I came to the library today thinking, because there's building renovations going on in my flat. And then, of course, they've put me in the room right next to the children's corner, and it's the last day of school before Easter. So there's about 4 million children outside. Just in case anyone can hear it, I want them to know.
I don't hear anything, but it's very quiet here in Bilthoven, which is a tiny village next to Utrecht, in the middle of the Netherlands. It's also, it's in between Utrecht, which is the 4th city of the Netherlands. It has around, I think, 400,000 citizens. And on the other side of our village is the only green area or something of one of the few nature parts of the Netherlands, called the Utrechtse Heuvelrug. So we're in between the woods and the city, which is a very nice place to be for me as a musician, but also as a label owner.
So you get that peace and serenity alongside the craziness of the music.
Yeah, the craziness of the music and also the opportunities, I think, because I have to say because of course I'm not doing everything alone, are putting up shows in Utrecht as well. And that's a lot easier to get people to come by and discover new experimental tunes than if you're totally in the middle of nowhere, I think.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we'll start with an easy question. I know we've done this before, but what do you listen to? What are your influences, and are they the same thing?
Yeah, I think they're the same thing. Yeah, I listen to a lot of bedroom musicians from the 90s on, who record in a lo-fi manner, who record heartfelt, genuine music, either by themselves or with friends. And a lot of the times those artists, such as Mount Eerie or Rick White, who was in Eric Strip and Elevator in the 90s, they're always putting out their own music on their own labels, or sometimes on smaller indie labels. So I think that's I definitely was influenced by a lot of that, and of course Robert Pollard from Guided by Voices, who is which is my main love, and also maybe main influence as a songwriter.
Where do you look for new music? Is it a conscious thing, or do you just stumble across things? And do you still get a thrill when you hear something you really like? Do you still get that sort of hairs on the back of the neck feeling?
Oh yeah, I do get that. It's actually, that's the thing that I think every music lover is aiming for, and I'm also still aiming to find that record that changes your life. Of course it doesn't happen that often as it did when you were 16, 17, but it still does. Yeah, it still makes me energetic and feel alive when it does. So yeah, I think for me there are different kinds, different ways to discover new music. Either I'm still reading magazines, for instance, or blogs or reviews, and then of course I'm following contemporary artists on social media, and sometimes they have, I don't know, support acts, or they say something about friends of theirs, and so you check that out. So it's more mouth to mouth kind of thing. Occasionally I follow the Spotify algorithms, not that often, I have to say, but sometimes something really cool pops up. Then in Utrecht, you have the Le Guess Who Festival, which is a great experimental 4-day music festival every year. And almost all 300 acts are worth checking out. So a lot of the music that I find interesting and cool comes from that festival, or either seeing them live or just checking out what plays on the festival. It's an ongoing thing, and I still like physical media. I still like CDs. I buy LPs. So, for instance, last weekend I was on a short holiday with my dad in Belgium near Brussels, and we were just roaming about in this very tiny village next to Brussels called Assen. And there was nothing really to do. There wasn't a pub. There wasn't anything. We did find a little bar which had a sort of open bar. They wanted to create a kind of cozy living room kind of vibe. It was a bit weird, so I was hesitant to go there because I was like, we're gonna be stuck there with locals who all know each other, and I'm not sure if we should go. I said to my dad, and he said, let's just try it. Let's go on an adventure. And then we walked in the place, and a little bit outside of the entrance, there was a 10-meter shed that we had to pass through, and it was filled with CDs. It was filled with folk music from all over the world, like world music, but also European folk. And all the CDs were very dusty. It was very strange because it was not someone's collection, but it was also not a store. There were prices, but they were very high, which were on the CDs. Then we walked in, and the owner explained, it used to be a CD store, but all the CDs were still available to buy for only €3 a piece. So the next 2 hours, my dad and I spent just roaming through all the CDs, just browsing, and I went home with a big pile, 20 CDs, some stuff like Alan Lomax recordings from the 60s, or Mongolian throat singing, which I heard about via the Le Guess Who Festival. They played there. That group played there a couple of years ago. So it was, and that gave me a lot of excitement still. I have those dreams where you visit record stores like that, or you discover a new album. But yeah, this time it happened in real life. And that's still really exciting to discover new music and have the chance or the opportunity, the chance to find that one album that changes everything for you.
So you mentioned your dad there. Is your dad the person who gave you that opportunity to start exploring music when you were young?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, my dad and my mom and dad were both making music on on a not a professional level, but yeah, my dad has always been discovering new albums, and he's from 1954. So especially in the late 70s, he really got into post-punk, Wire, Devo, Only Ones. But he also liked 60s psychedelica such as East of Eden, but also the Kings. And yeah, that definitely left an imprint. And he told me he had different phases. In the 90s, he also had a phase where he discovered Bonnie Prince Billy and Spark Horse and stuff like that. So yeah, in the mid 90s, I was about 10 years old. That was for me the most formative period of music, that we discovered those things together, I think, as a family. So we went on holiday trips, and we brought Radiohead's OK Computer and Cake's Fashion Nugget and Eels, the first 3 albums. So stuff like that went on holidays with us.
I had the same experience. My parents, my mum was a dancer in the late 60s. So she couldn't afford albums. So I had access to a massive amount of 7-inch singles when I was growing up. I was constantly throwing these on the record player as early as I can remember, and making my own fake radio shows to myself and playing lots of Elvis and you know, real sort of 60s legends. Beatles, that kind of thing. I think parents' music knowledge and experience can have a lot to do with where you go with your music if you choose that path.
For you, what would have been the first artist or maybe album that really felt like something of your own taste, of your own discovery?
The first album I ever bought was Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontiers. Well, I think I was 8, and I went into a record shop in my local town with my own money for the first time.
Yeah.
And I put down my money and I bought a second-hand copy of Adam and the Ants, Kings of the Wild Frontiers, which to this day is still one of my favourite albums. The double drumming on that is immense.
I'm gonna write it down too. I haven't heard it.
Oh no, it's a brilliant album. It's got that sort of tail end of post-punk, new romantic sort of vibe about it. They used to dress up in something akin to Wild West, but made into the 80s when they did live shows and Top of the Pops and things like that. So you should check out some videos as well.
Here you go, listeners. This in real life is is how you discover new music.
Absolutely. Whenever anybody mentions a band to me, and in fact, every release you've put out since I first met you and we first chatted, I've listened to everything that's come out on your label as well. And the album that came out a couple of weeks ago by the Dutch artist, it's in Dutch as well.
Oh, Breuer.
Yes, I very much enjoyed it. Obviously, I didn't understand the words.
No.
But really, really good album. I really love the sound of the album as well.
Yeah, so it's a nice mixture of lo-fi and field recordings, but also little folk songs mixed with more Neil Young kind of bigger indie rock.
It's definitely something I'd reach for at the end of a long day just to wind down with.
Yeah.
Moving on to indie music specifically, have you always been aware of independent music? If not, can you sort of pinpoint a time when you discovered the difference between sort of mainstream, big labels and indie?
Ooh, yeah, I think that realization came pretty quick in my life. When I was about 8 or 9, I was a very big Red Hot Chili Peppers fan. And I knew all the words to Blood Sugar Sex Magic. And I was, singing those songs in school, stuff like that. We always had a membership to the Donald Duck, the comic, as a kid. So one day when I was 10, my parents decided, okay, you're too old for Donald Duck right now. Let's switch to a music magazine. And we get the Oor, which is the main Dutch music magazine. So yeah, I was a little bit bummed, but they gave me the CD that came along with the first edition. When you get a membership, they always try to convince you, and they give you a CD back then, or now an LP. But It was the Prodigy's "The Fat of the Land."
Oh, what an album!
I still have that one because that's how they how my parents wanted me to make a smooth transition from kids comics to music. And then when we got that magazine, I started reading it, and of course I started the whole discovery of music. And at first we did that together. It wasn't a mainstream, it was an alternative. It is an alternative magazine, but still you get a whole sense of, okay, somebody's putting this out on a label, and you start checking out other things on the label. Bright Eyes came up in 2000, 2001. We discovered it in the Netherlands with this album Lifted, and it came out on Saddle Creek. And that was one of those labels that was, okay, this is not a major thing. This is a small thing run by people who also make the music, but are also putting out music by their friends and by artists that are sort of operating in the same musical realms. And that was pretty interesting. So I think Saddle Creek was among one of the first labels when I realized, okay, you have the mainstream pop music. In between, you have the sort of the bigger alternative stuff. And then you have the underground stuff. I wouldn't say I was only interested in the underground stuff. I still am not.
Oh yeah, same here. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's all about the music at the end of the day. It doesn't matter whether a band's on a big label or a small label, but you get used to being able to tell whether the band have made their decisions or had them made for them in a way, don't you?
Yeah, and also like I've always been a pretty big Weezer fan. And in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was already, I mean, they've always been on like bigger alternative labels, and they've always made questionable decisions regarding their music. And it's not, I think with them, it's not always the label that forces commercial decisions upon them. I think it's also because Rivers Cuomo is just a weird person in general. But it's definitely all about the music, and it's okay if something is commercial and still very good and coming out on one of the biggest labels. I can still play it. It's an interesting question to realize that there was a certain point that I understood there are underground labels. During my teens, I had some experimenting with putting out stuff on a blog or on a small label and putting out our own CDRs, just and distribute them in the high school, sell them for €3, stuff like that. But it wasn't until I went to college in 2005. I became friends with Cedric, who runs Snowstar Records, a label in the Netherlands. And we were playing in a band together, and he was putting out stuff, and he started putting out my stuff. And that's when I really realized you can do something like that yourself and make it interesting and really help other people, your friends, and also help your own music become a little bit more known.
We've had some debate on this show about what the difference is, this podcast, about what the difference is between indie and DIY.
All right.
Because I would consider your label an indie label, but because you self-release your stuff through the label, does that make you a DIY artist, but everybody else an indie artist that you work with on your label?
Yeah, what did the other people say?
I don't think anyone could quite pinpoint it. I think there's a fine line between indie and DIY. I think DIY almost suggests you've completely self-released something. Indie may be more about having a small label behind you.
Were there people that you interviewed that don't make music themselves and just putting out stuff?
No. It came up with an Irish band I interviewed called By Curious. And they were struggling to find the line between what is DIY and what is indie when I asked them the same question that I asked you about being aware of independent music.
Yeah, I think it's a very thin line, but it sounds pretty good to have the line drawn between if you're making music or putting out only putting out stuff. Like my friend Cedric from Snowstar, we used to play in bands, but he kind of quit the whole making music thing and just focused on putting out albums by other people. I think it's a classic indie label now, Snowstar Records, because he operates on a very small level, but still manages to get traction in the indie world. He puts out great albums, but he doesn't make music himself. For me, I do put out my own stuff. Not all the stuff that I make, but I do put out a lot of the stuff that I make on Tiny Room. Still, there's right now around 20 active artists in the Tiny Room roster, and I'm only involved in 3 or 4 of those. So there's more artists that I'm not involved with musically than I am. I do consider myself a DIY artist, making my own artwork, selling everything. I don't think it's a DIY label, for one thing, because there's a lot of musicians who also who just make their own music and their own art. I'm not involved with that. I do think along sometimes or help out whenever I can. And the other thing is that I'm not doing everything by myself for the label. There's my wife, Anneke. She helps out with, she made the logo. She does a lot of other design or arty things for the label. There's my friend Thijs, who plays as I Am Oak, who is on Snowstar Records, not on Tiny.
That great album just came out.
Yeah, that album is
really good album.
Yeah, that's one of his best, definitely. And well, Thijs helps out with every record that I put out to for the artwork to get it perfect for the pressing company, the DTP side of the artwork, and he helps out. And sometimes I give something in return, but a lot of the times there's not a lot of money involved, and we do it together. So yeah, I think the label is definitely more based on a do it together structure. Yeah, where there's people helping out, and that also involves helping out with the promotion. And I think Tiny Room made a little shift the past 4 years, where at first maybe it was more a DIY label in the sense that I also took on all the promotion myself, and I sent out promos, and I wrote the bios, and I distributed everything, went to the local record stores myself with the bag. And right now, I shifted the label a little bit more towards a community where I provide all the info and the infrastructure to put out a record. But the artists are doing a lot more themselves, also with the promotion. For instance, that record you were talking about earlier, Breuer, the first Dutch song record I put out, they, especially the singer and the songwriter of the artist, Rinko Breuer, he made the promo packages himself. So he burned CDRs. I gave the addresses. I said, oh, you should send a package like this and write a note like this. And here's the address. And he assembled everything together and did the work and put in the hours. That way, he also was able to build a connection with those people, with those reviewers, with those journalists. And a lot of the times I was in the CC and the mail conversation. So it's a thing you're doing together. But this way, I'm able to help out a lot more musicians. Well, so far, they also like this kind of, they like to learn how it works and also build their own connections. So they're not dependent on me for their promotion. If Breuer wants to self-release or do something else with another record, right now they have built their own connections, and I think that's a lot more valuable, and it gives me the opportunity to not, well, after 70 releases, after 70 times of cutting my own promo sleeves and burning CDs and sending them, it just got a little, I was a little bit bored with it. And this way, it also keeps me going. It keeps my energy flowing a bit more.
As an independent musician, what do you find are the biggest challenges?
as a musician, if I look at the World of Dust or Combo Kazam, so the most active projects that I'm working on right now, I always find it difficult to get the audience to listen to it, to get an audience to listen to it, because there's a lot of music coming out every day. A lot of the times also very good. And to keep up with the competition by posting on social media, by having every aspect of your promo cycle covered, by sending it out to reviewers, but also knowing how Spotify works and get into playlists and stuff like that, it can be very overwhelming. I think as a musician, what I fear most is setting goals too high or get overwhelmed because it is a lot of work. And sometimes it just doesn't align with the rest going on in my life.
And how about as an indie label? What are the challenges as a label for you?
I think the same, but also as a label, I would have loved it if there was a little bit more a base of listeners or of there is for Tiny Room. I mean, there is a small base of people who are checking it out, who are listening to it, who are writing about it. So I'm very grateful for that. And if that part or that audience was a little bit bigger, it would feel a little bit less like inventing the wheel every time over and over again.
Moving on to the next section, which is about the creative process. What do you find is the difference in your creative process when you're making solo music compared to making music with the band?
I really love making music with bands, with my friends, and being in the same room. And even when you don't really feel like going somewhere because you want to stay at home, you're tired, etc., you still have this obligation to meet up. Yeah, that really helps to keep things going, to keep things interesting, and try to find ways. And the interaction with other people, with your friends, and the way they approach music, it's very inspiring, I think. And on your own, it's a lot. Yeah, of course, it's a lot more in solitude. And there I always try to make it interesting by setting my own parameters and setting like the topics that I want to work with or the production techniques that I want to use on a certain album, stuff like that. And that also makes it interesting. But if I look back at the last year, for instance, it was a little bit chaotic in my personal spheres. And then my solo work is the first thing that goes to the background.
So how do you think your music has evolved from when you started out to now?
Oh, that's a good question. It probably has gotten better.
Well, you've certainly learnt more instruments, haven't you? Because you like to throw more into the mix and have different sounds with every album.
Yeah, I keep buying stuff.
So we all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if your wife's like mine, but she gets increasingly annoyed by the amount of stuff in the spare room.
Yeah. Well, I'm here in the attic. A few weeks ago, I tried to sell a guitar amp, an old Charlie guitar amp, a 70s really cool amp. But in the end, I just couldn't do it. and I kept it. And it is in the living room right now. No, no. My wife also likes to make art and music, so she understands.
That's lucky. Yeah,
it's not a topic of discussion. Yeah, apart from more instruments, I think I've gotten better and I've gotten more focused on what I want to make. And I always go back to that initial spark that got me writing and recording in the first place. As a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, when I was in my parents' house, messing around with the Tascam 8-track recorder. So yeah, a few years ago, I bought a Tascam like that again. And I'm always switching a little bit between getting better with production techniques and microphone placements and stuff like that. And then always going back to that spontaneous, anything can happen kind of experimentation that I had when I was 10 or 11 years old. When I can combine those two, that's when the really good stuff comes out. But it's sometimes I lean more towards the experimental side, and sometimes more to objectively good recording.
Moving on to running a label, what is the most rewarding part of running Tiny Room?
For me, it's the connection I have with the musicians that make the music. For me, that's the most rewarding thing, and also the thing that keeps me having the label. Just to receive emails or WhatsApp. Like yesterday, I got a WhatsApp from my friend Matthew, who is in Astral Swans, a Canadian folk artist. And he sent me on WhatsApp 3 new songs and asked, oh, what do you like about these recordings or mixes or whatever? And then for me to be able to listen to it and to interact with him, saying, giving my feedback and talking a little bit about what's going on in life. And knowing, oh, maybe in 3 or 4 years, he'll be touring Europe again, and I'll have him here in my house, and we'll just drive to weird little places together and do a show and drive back in the night and have a breakfast in the morning with the kids that are, I don't know how it is with your family, but they keep on growing.
Yes, it's annoying that, isn't it?
Yeah. And that also, I really like Astral Swans. Every 3 or 4 years, he comes over to Europe to play. So he sees the kids every 3 or 4 years. So they're always, they change a lot.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize, well, that family life is going pretty fast, but also the music side, it's always there, and it's always something you can rely on. I really like those friendships, and I'm not putting out stuff by people that I don't want to be friends with.
No, it's good to be able to have those connections, not outside of the music, but to have other things in common as well, because I think music draws a lot of people together, but if you don't have more than the music, it becomes quite stale quite quickly.
Yeah, and also the artists are not expecting the label to promote and to find the audience, and then they can just make the music. I mean, it's not like that, because it's a do it together vibe.
Yeah. Do you think running a label gives you an advantage over other artists?
On my label, no, I don't think so, because it's all the same. It's all Tiny Room. I also have I think a lot of musicians have trouble selling themselves. Of course, I also have that. For me, it's easier to talk about a project that I'm not musically involved with than something of my own. But I've gotten used to it.
You almost have to disassociate if it's your own project. You have to look outside, maybe.
But I've gotten used to that. I can send out promos for my own music and say, this is a really good album. You should check it out. Yeah. The other thing that I can think of that I could be in an advantage would be with booking shows, for instance. Like when I'm booking shows or organizing concerts, I can put myself or my own project in an advantage and just book myself all the time. That I'm aware of. And it depends a little bit. Of course, I also like to perform live. So I got the question to put on a Tiny Room event in Eindhoven in September. So in a very cool DIY place, underground place. And I was asked to put 3 artists on the bill to perform. Well, then I really like to perform as well. So I'm not putting down 3 of my own projects, but I do play with one of them. And then there's 2 that I'm not musically involved with that are also playing. No, I don't think I think I'm too morally ethical for that to really take an advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're just too nice.
But I'm also not forgetting myself. I do want to perform. I'm booking shows. I have the opportunity sometimes to host shows or to organize shows. It would be stupid to put my own projects on the background.
Is it challenging for you to put on, to use an English expression, different hats depending on if you're running the label or if you're making music? What are the challenges of doing both?
I don't think about that a lot, actually.
You separate them quite well. You know when you're doing one thing and when you're doing another, and it's not too difficult to do that.
Yeah, and it doesn't really feel like different hats. It's just when I'm working on the promotion of an album and the label stuff, it's the same. I do the same things for my own record as for other other albums.
So now we move on to the booklet. You've produced a short booklet which you give to new artists who want to join your label. It's full of interesting snippets of just interesting things that you can do to promote yourself and things like that. What was the thought behind that? Why did you feel that was necessary?
It's called called a DIY handbook for music promotion. I think it was the first step into this whole do it together kind of structure that I was working towards, where I wanted to write down what I'm doing as a label. So if people would read that, they would also have a feeling of what goes on in the world of a small independent label, to either do it themselves or to help out with certain stuff. I don't really remember if I shared it with the Tiny Room roster, with the artists on the label. But what I do now is, indeed, whenever I get a few submissions a week from artists from all over the world, and whenever they make cool music and they're nice, and we get a conversation going, because that's what I like, even when I don't have the time or don't necessarily hear the music being part of the label, I send the handbook so they can do their own thing with it, either start their own label or just be inspired or motivated or have some sort of guidance. It's something that I just like to share with the outside world. I wrote it 5 years ago. It really needs an update, but that's also one of the things that just doesn't really happen for some reason.
I think you say about an update. I mean, I read it when we arranged the interview.
Yeah.
It's still very current, but I just think things have taken a turn for being a bit more of a struggle since COVID, because people have a bit less money, they're a bit less time to do things, and certainly with the current world situation, people's minds are on other things right now as well. Maybe that's taken a toll on people in a way.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah. The underground scene also shifted quite a bit, which doesn't make the words in the handbook untrue, because I still think it's step one is to be part of your local scene and community, and with the local bands and rehearsal spaces and teachers. And yeah, it could also be that I'm a little bit older, but COVID definitely did not help. For a lot of the music scenes in cities in the Netherlands, I'm a little bit out of it. So I'm not entirely sure where to invest my time or where to search for it. And I'm sure there's young people who are doing this kind of things, putting on shows. I feel disconnected a little bit.
Have you found since COVID over in the Netherlands that you've had the same problem as we've had here, that a whole bunch of venues changed their policy on live music or closed down, and the musical landscape kind of shifted because of COVID?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Are you talking about Finland?
I'm talking about Finland. But I mean, the same happened in the UK from what I'm aware of. I've been back quite a lot.
I think in the UK might be even worse from what I read. But yeah, of course, in the Netherlands that also happened.
So as a label, you give your artists complete creative freedom when they make their music.
Sure.
Do you find that is one of the main reasons artists like to stay independent, in your experience?
It could be. I don't know if the artists that I work with, and me myself included, ever got the chance to do it differently.
Would you have signed to a major label if you had been given the opportunity?
Now that is a good question. Depending on the project, yes. Yeah, I would love to have that experience. It's probably not very suited for the world just, and it's also not going to happen with the music that I make.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Combo Kazam, certainly, I think a major could see money in that. I would say it's a little more mainstream than your solo stuff.
Yeah, it could be, but it's still, then it's a joint decision of the rest of them. And we all have jobs on the side, sometimes families. It's probably not going to happen, but it could be very interesting. Yeah.
How do you tell somebody no if they come to you with something, you like it, but you don't think it will fit with the label? I mean, you've said you give them this handbook. How do you say, no, it's not for me, without, I mean, I had to do this a lot as well, without feeling terrible about having rejected somebody. It's almost like you're rejecting their music, even though you're not.
Or even worse, you're rejecting their whole self.
Yeah, exactly. Because some people do really take it to heart, don't they?
Yeah. I think I'm doing something well because not a lot of people are angry. The handbook really helps because you're giving something. You're giving something back. I mean, these are all real people who make music just like me because they like to do it and they're just seeking out help. So that's important for everybody to understand. They're real, genuine people and they should be approached like that. And a lot of the times they also send very nice emails. Sometimes they did their homework and they know what I've been putting out and stuff like that. They know my name. So they've been reading about it. I always give an honest, and I always try to, even because most of the times I can't put it out on the label for various reasons. Most of the time because I don't think the music is completely 100% ticking all my personal boxes. I only want to put something out when I also would have bought the album myself and put it in my year-end list or something like that. It's a pretty high standard, but that's not always the reason that I want to give, because that could be a bit harsh. So I try to give something back, the handbook or a conversation, or sometimes when it's a local band, the opportunity to play a show in our Studio Patrick, our DIY venue, or I invite them to a show that I'm playing in their city or something like that. So I try to make a connection in some way that also not only gives them the feeling that they got something out of it, but just that they get something out of it, that they get something out of reaching out, expose yourself to this label. And sometimes I'm being pretty honest about the music itself, because sometimes it's blues rock or something. So I just say, okay, or really loud thrash metal or something. And I'm just like, okay, I mostly do bedroom folk or this or that. Sometimes it's really well produced, slick folk music. And I respond, okay, I'm more into the lo-fi, out-of-tune song, sad songwriters and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm responding a little bit jokey, but also, also the truth. It's a combination of that. But I do agree, it's not always nice to do, and it's also hard to write a proper response.
Okay, so social media. Obviously, you and I both grew up in an age just before social media became a big thing. So the way we discovered music when we were young is vastly different to how kids discover music these days. How do you cope with the constant pressure of having to create a social media output? Is it something you find challenging as a promotional tool? And do you think artists do enough, or have there been times you wish they'd been more active?
I always think that artists should do what they want to do regarding social media output. During COVID, when we were at home the whole time, I found it quite interesting, and I dived a bit deeper into the whole matter of social media and branding, and that was pretty cool. With Combo Kazam, we did some cool stuff, and with the World of Dust, I managed to really get it into my system. But the recently, the past 2 years or something, I've shied away naturally a little bit from it. I think it's a good tool, but it's also fleeting. I mean, people are moving on to the next platform, and I don't want to keep up with every platform. Like, I'm not on TikTok. I don't want to install the app. I know it would probably be a very interesting promotional tool, but it's just that's where I draw the line. it's not going to happen for me anymore.
That's fair enough. I mean, I've discovered a lot of great young bands on TikTok, but I don't post myself. So yeah, I guess I'm sort of halfway in the middle of that. I'm using it to discover, but in terms of promoting myself on there, I'm still a little bit, am I too old for this? You know?
But why? You know how it works. You're discovering stuff. So you're an active user.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm still a little bit old school, and I think that YouTube would appeal more to the demographic that I'm covering. I think everybody uses YouTube. Even the kids are still using YouTube.
Yeah.
So rather than having to use TikTok, which will disappear at some stage soon if everything keeps going down the way it is. Do you find that maybe for you as an artist, certainly as a solo artist, you've done enough albums and enough promotion in the past that you've reached your demographic? You know who your people are, so social media isn't as essential for you as it is for a new band, maybe?
I think the audience and the demographic needs to be refreshed every time, and also needs to know that you're still there. So definitely social media could be still very interesting for me as a solo artist. It's just sometimes a choice to not spend the time on it. But it doesn't mean that I think I'm already there. Let's talk about a new platform, ChatGPT, that we were talking about earlier. That's what you see right now. A lot of young kids are not using Google to search for stuff, but they're using ChatGPT to Google.
Yeah.
And to find out about stuff.
It's so almost like a spoken Wikipedia in a way.
Yeah, which is strange because it's not always the truth, what the algorithm tells you, but it's getting closer and closer to the truth. So the new models they're also Googling, they're also searching the internet. They're not just reproducing what they're being fed as data. So, for instance, a few months ago, I was asking, okay, how's the DIY scene in Haarlem, a little place next to Amsterdam? And who are the organizers, and where are the venues, and what are the interesting places as an indie musician? And those models are really getting better and better every day. So that makes it really interesting for a small label or an artist to find out more, to learn more, and to have a better feeling of your audience and what you're aiming for. So for me, I was telling you, I feel a little bit disconnected of the indie scene because there's so much things that has changed since COVID. But ChatGPT gives me some control back to map these independent, potentially interesting scenes in the Netherlands and abroad, of course. And that could also work for musicians. And I do think a lot of the submissions that I'm getting right now are from people who have asked ChatGPT, what are the most interesting Dutch independent labels if you search for experimental folk music in the Netherlands, Tiny Room is the first one that comes up as a result. Maybe that's a more interesting platform for me than TikTok.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought to use it that way, so that's actually given me some thoughts.
Definitely, yeah.
Which venues haven't closed down since COVID that I've played at, sort of thing.
Yeah, you can ask anything. Yeah, and it's interesting. Yeah, a friend of mine, he had a country singer-songwriter come over a couple of weeks ago, and he said, it's so hard to book shows and to find shows for an old school country singer-songwriter. And I just put that question in ChatGPT and asked what are the tiny bars, the pubs that are doing this kind of shows, and it came up with a list of 30 pubs in the Netherlands. And then 1 minute later, you have all the email addresses and you have a standard email and everything ready. So it makes makes work a lot easier.
Yeah, I will certainly be checking that out. Quick question that probably should have fitted in earlier about live shows. As a performer, what do you find are the differences between playing a live show solo and with a band? And what do you prefer?
Ooh, I like both. With both, I'm always aiming for the same sweet spot between super focus and relaxation or something, or a spontaneous living in the moment kind of vibe. And with both solo and as a band, I'm aiming for it. And when it's a good show, I'm also experiencing it, that sweet spot. But yeah, with the band, I like it that you can share the experience with your friends and also share the moments surrounding the live performance. So the waiting and the eating and the traveling. But that's also sometimes what I really like about traveling alone. It's nice to be able by yourself and make your own decisions. And so I love to have both. And the past year, I haven't done a lot of solo shows. It's been more with bands. Yeah, for the coming year, I see the same thing happening for now. But in the end, I think both are very, very important to me. What do you think?
I hate playing solo shows. I absolutely despise it.
The show itself or everything around it?
No, I'm not a very confident musician. I'm a singer that has the musical ability to put music to my words so that I can build a song with other people. So when it's stripped back and it's just me and an acoustic guitar, I really struggle with that concept. Moving on to the more general questions. What are your thoughts on the instant fame machine? So things like X Factor and Idols and things like this.
Yeah, I think there's a market for it, and it's a totally different world. I don't really pay any thoughts to it.
Do you watch them at all if they're on TV or?
No, we don't have a regular TV with channels and stuff like that. We just have Netflix on the laptop.
You're not TV people.
No,
that's refreshing.
Yeah, I don't know. We got rid of the TV 10 years ago, and I haven't missed it a day. So I'm also not totally sure what is going on TV or something.
Okay, no, that's refreshing. I like that. That's a good answer. What is the best advice you can give to somebody who wants to start a band in these current uncertain times?
I would always give the advice to start a band because you like to play music and experience playing music together. And then advise not to expect too much from the outside world.
That's probably the most important part these days, isn't it?
Yeah. Whatever happens in terms of exposure or audience, or it's just an extra, and you should regard it that way. It's just really nice when something small happens and you're not expecting anything.
Yeah, it's better to go in with low expectations and exceed that than to go in with high expectations and end up depressed and suicidal.
Yeah, so that would be my advice. Just have no expectations and really enjoy whatever does happen.
Good advice. Do you believe that independent music is in a good place at the moment?
Oh, it's certainly in an interesting place. Yeah, I think it's in a good place. Yeah, the quality is very good, is very high. The quantity is also, like we discussed, very high. And there's enough challenges in the ever-changing landscape, especially after COVID, but also before that, and also with everything going on in the world. Independent music will always, it's music by and for the people, and it will always find a way. But it does mean that it's a challenging time. And I actually kind of like that. Especially in the Netherlands, there's been for a long time everything was very well organized, and there was a lot of money from the government, and there was like venues were being made, but especially for a big audience. So there were a lot of big new venues with cool bands playing, but then not a lot of people showing up. I think it just goes a little bit back to what it's supposed to be. So I hope everybody will just find the right niche audience and small places to play, and have it more local and have it more under the radar, or at least out of the commercial infrastructure of venues, of labels and stuff like that. I think it's a good thing. It's not been laid out, right? It's all new.
Yeah, COVID was almost a reset, so everybody had a chance to start again and see what works a second time almost.
Yeah.
Do you think it's easier for an artist based in, say, for example, the UK or the US than it is for somebody in a small country like you or I am at the moment?
No, I would not know.
Do you find it's challenging being in such a small country? I guess because you're not in the biggest city or anything, do you find that a challenge at times?
No, because in Utrecht we do have a lot of opportunities and a lot of record stores, labels, venues, communities. No, I don't think it's. I also wouldn't know how to answer the previous question because I don't know how many bands or how many artists there are and how many make it. So it seems like there's even more competition in the UK and the US. So
Maybe,
it might be even harder to stick your head above the surface.
I know certainly in the UK a lot of the smaller venues went bust because of COVID. So I think it has become much more difficult there. Whereas in Helsinki, we saw a lot of the big venues closed. What are you currently up to? I know you're constantly working on both your own music and the label. What's coming up before the end of the year?
In October existed for 10 years. So now this is the 11th year of Tiny Room Records. And I've been working on a compilation album of foundlings. So songs by all the artists on the label and a little bit around it that haven't found a proper release yet. So it's being, right now it's being pressed on vinyl. It's a double vinyl record with 27 or 28 songs, a lot of songs. And there's all the Tiny Room art, almost all the Tiny Room artists are involved in it. There's also a new song by Bonnie Prince Billy and by Carl Blau, and it's a really cool thing. So I'm really busy finishing that up. I did a crowdfunding for the first time in my life to fund it, and it was a success. So that's nice. And then we were in the studio with Combo Kazam to record our third record with an external producer this time, and it was really, really cool. And we recorded the whole album all in one take. Well, not every song the first take was good, but a lot of songs we were right. The first time we played it was already good, but we played it all together in one room and one recording. So no overdubs, no editing, stuff like that.
Old school.
Yeah, and it sounds really, really good so far. We do overdub the vocals, but then I hope to have it out later this year. And with the World of Dust, I'm more in the phase before composing. So I'm trying to conceptualize a lot of the thoughts that are running through my head, some involving fish and marine biology, some involving the things that I've been going through last year with Zen meditation and all sorts of things. And it's an interesting phase, but it will definitely not be done this year.
And of course, you have to work out which new instruments you can justify buying to make it.
Yeah.
Okay, final question. First of all, it's a two-part question. How can people find out about you as an artist and your bands?
The World of Dust and Combo Kazam can be found on Instagram. I think that's the main social media platform. But all the music can be found on tinyroom.nl, the website of the label. So all the music that deserves a wider audience gets released on there.
Okay, and how about? Well, I think you've done it because I was going to ask you about the label, and you've answered that question as well. So
yeah, it's all one thing, right?
Yeah, well, I guess it is from your perspective. Yeah. So Thank you very much for your time, Stefan. Hopefully, we'll catch up in a future episode as well.
All right.